Welcome back to episode 3 of Brewbaker's Garage. Haven't really been doing much on the car, haven't started it yet. So this is basically just an update to let you know what I've been basically just tinkering with. Sort of preparing to get the car started. I did get some power from the ignition switch to one of the solenoids, the relays for the ignition. So I was getting some clicking, but there was no activity. So I decided to take the starter motor out of the car to see if that worked. So I've given that a test, which I'll show you in a second, and that works fine. So I'll put that back in, and basically I had to drop the power steering to get access to it. It was an absolute pain in the ass, let me tell you, being right-hand drive. The starter unit was right above the power steering arm and pinion and all that assembly. So that took a couple of hours and some skin knuckles to get that off. So yeah, let's have a look and see what I've been doing. Okay, well you can see I've removed the radiator and the shroud. Now they're both original Ford parts, which I'll show you in a second. So that's just basically just to give me better access to this area, so I can give it a bit more of a clean, and I probably will take the radiator fan off too, just so I can get clearer access to some of the ancillary parts on the engine. Well, before I show you what else I've done, this is the radiator and that is the shroud. Now these are original parts, and there's the, actually let me just show you the battery tray, because that's pretty amazing that there's hardly any rust on that at all. A little bit here on the corner where it's eaten away, but other than that, it's that'll clean up pretty good, because I wanted, where I can, use as much original parts as I possibly can. So this is the original shroud. You can see the Ford part number there. So that'll be getting a bit of a clean up, a bit of a refurb, and that'll be going back on. Now this is the original radiator as well. Now this is for an air conditioning car, so it's slightly wider. I think it's slightly wider than your average radiator, but again it has, let me just stand this up, get the camera strap out of the way. So there we have the, let me just flip that around. So there we have the FOMO Co badge there, which is what we love to see. It did have some water still in it, believe it or not. Oh, Christ. Can I get that off? So yeah, there's the radiator, the shroud, and the battery tray. So I'll give those a good clean, probably send the radiator off to get reconditioned. And I'll have a crack at the shroud myself, because that's an original unit, and these things are actually worth quite a bit of money now. And obviously the battery tray, just give that a sandblast or a bit of a wire wheel job, a bit of a spray paint, and that should come up pretty good. So you can see here where I've removed the bolts, and basically need to move the power steering unit out of the way so I can pull the starter motor out and give that a bench test, which I'll do as soon as I pull it out, which hopefully will be in the next 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, so this is where all the fun and games were going on over the last few days. I had to drop the power steering unit to get access to the starter motor up here. Being a right-hand drive car, everything's moved over to the other side, so the whole rack and everything is on the right-hand side of the car. So I couldn't, it was really hard to get in and sort of get access to the nuts. I'm not sure if I videoed myself doing that. I may have done. because I wanted to test the starter motor, and some of the cabling looked a bit dodgy. So let's have a look at that. Okay, well here's the starter motor removed. Now I'm not sure if you can see, but it is a Bosch unit, and it's actually made in Australia, which is pretty cool. So I'd like to keep this, if it's still functioning okay, I'd like to actually do a refurb once the car's back on the road and put some brushes back in this, if possible, because I did look online for replacement starter units, and they just look like garbage. They just look like they're made in China, you know, $100 Saturday night specials. So if I can get this thing put back in, cleaned up, looking nice, new cables or that sort of thing, I'd much prefer that. So let's give it a test and see what happens. Okay, now we've got everything hooked up here. Battery cables to positive, negative on your battery. From the battery, the negative cable goes to the casing of the unit here as an earth, and positive goes to the power to the solenoid there, and this small wire here is the trigger. So by all rights, if I put that wire onto the positive, it should fire the mechanism and make this shoot out and spin. So let's see what happens. Okay, let's go for it. Jesus. Okay. One more. So I would say that's a win. That works pretty good. So I will clean that up and put that back on the engine just for the initial starting, and then once I have the engine out of the car, I'll pretty it up, put new brushes in it, and put it back on, because being that it's a quality unit made in Australia, I'd rather see that on the car than something from China. Okay, just before I go, I'd just like to show you what my next step will be, and that is to sort out this wiring. These are the two relays that triggered the ignition. I've traced the wire back from inside the car, which I'll show you in a minute, which is hooked up to this Crane digital ignition system. Now, on the trigger cable here, there is a rogue wire hanging off from the distributor, so I'm not really sure where that goes, whether it's an earth, but it doesn't seem to fit in this plug here. I have tried to look online for some diagrams from Crane, but their online information is pretty crap, to be quite honest. So that'll just have to come down to trial and error. So I've removed the dash, the upper dash from the car, just so I can get access to, well, what I'm about to show you in here. So let's have a look at what is actually holding me up from getting the car started. So you can see the wiring here. It's a bit of a mess. Well, it is a mess. I've finally figured out how to get this ignition to fire the relays, because they weren't doing anything before, but I'm not happy with the thickness of the wiring on here, so I may have to replace all of that. And there are also relays over here that were clicking on and off all the time, so I've actually bypassed this one, so the ignition will go straight to the starter motor. But you can see here that, yeah, there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done to sort all this out. Most of the original wiring loom is all still here, but it just has some other garbage sort of piggyback to it that needs to be bypassed and just removed. So yeah, that's basically what's holding me up at the moment. So that's about it for now. Alrighty, that's about all I've got for this episode. At the moment, it's more or less just a diary sort of thing. Nothing significant's happening at the moment as far as the engine is concerned. But I'm happy the starter motor is functioning well. So that's some money saved, because a good quality starter motor is going to set you back about $500 here in Australia. Because as I said, most of the starter motors available for Fords of this era are from China. They may look pretty, but in the long term you're going to get stung with crap like that. So I'd rather refurbish the Bosch unit I have. So hopefully the next episode I'll have the car hopefully running. So what I've done, I've put some oil down the spark plug holes. I videoed myself doing all that sort of stuff. It's a bit boring, but I'll put it in the next video. I've turned it over by hand. It's running free. I've even checked the oil and it looks like honey, which is amazing. So I'll probably just leave that in for the initial startup and then dump that once it's been idling for a little bit. So as I said, I've only got about 2 or 3 hours a week to work on the car at the moment. Hopefully that'll change in the coming months. But for now, I'm just sort of steadily trying to do a little bit at a time. The electrical wiring is going to be an absolute pain in the backside. I know that, but it has to be done. And then once the engine's running and idling and I'm happy with how it's performing and it's not just going to fail on me, I'll take that and the transmission out of the car, and then I'll work on spray painting it while we're still in summer here in Australia. So that's about all I've got for now. I'll try and do a video a week, but for now that's all I've got, so I'll see you in the next video.